Several of you appear to be having issues with lesson 5.1, which is entitled Angles and the Unit Circle. And the questions that you seem to be having trouble with are intended to help you become familiar with the unit circle. And it's primarily focusing on, at least in this lesson, just the first quadrant of the unit circle. So I've attached to the announcements for week 5 a unit circle. And I would strongly suggest that you print one of these and keep it handy as you're working through the problems. And again, for this particular lesson and the questions in Newton, we're going to focus on just the first quadrant. And if you don't recall from your algebra days, the first quadrant, and I'm outlining it for you, is the upper right corner of the unit circle. So this is quadrant 1. And you rotate counterclockwise. Here's quadrant 2. Then you have quadrant 3. And quadrant 4. Now, one of the nice things is once you get familiar with quadrant 1, there is a pattern to it. Because if you'll notice, pi sixth and then 5 pi sixth have the same ordered pair, but we change the sign SIGN based upon the quadrant in which we're located. So there is a pattern to the unit circle. And again, for lesson 5.1, we're going to focus on this first quadrant. Now, there are other videos in GoView that show you how we come up with these ordered pairs for 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees, or pi sixths, pi fourths, and pi thirds, respectively. So you can take a look at those if you're interested in knowing that. The other thing that I want to remind you about is that normally, again, you'll see it written as an ordered pair because we're in the coordinate system. In the algebra, we write in the coordinate system x comma y. And you think about that in terms of trigonometry, it is cosine theta, sine theta. The x is the cosine and the y is the sine. Okay, so you may want to make yourself a note about that as well. So the first question here says, if the terminal side of angle theta passes through a point on the unit circle in the first quadrant where x is the square root of 2 over 2, what is the exact measure of theta? So it may help you, I know it does me, to draw a picture of what is being described here. You have your x-axis and your y-axis, and we know that we're talking about the unit circle. So I'm going to kind of draw me a circle here as best I can on my, and it says the terminal side. So typically when we draw an angle on the unit circle, your vertex of the angle is on the origin. Your initial side is on the positive x-axis, and then you rotate. So we're going to rotate this angle, and the terminal side is where the angle stops. Okay, so this would be angle theta that we're looking for, and we're told in terms of an ordered pair that the x value is square root 2 over 2. Now, there's a couple of clues here that you need to use the unit circle. One, it says that a point on the unit circle in the first quadrant. So again, it tells you, it kind of gives you the clue in the question that you want to think about the unit circle. So if I go back over to my unit circle and I focus on quadrant 1, I'm looking for where the x value is square root 2 over 2. That happens to be in this middle point here. It happens to be on this one. Okay, and that corresponds to a 45-degree angle or 2 pi fourths. Now, it doesn't indicate whether it wants it in degrees or radians, so it may tell you that, but theta here would be a 45-degree angle or pi fourths in terms of radians. And again, all I'm doing is reading it off of the unit circle. So again, you may want to keep that handy. And again, I think you can benefit from drawing the picture as well. So let's look at another one. This one says, if the terminal side of angle theta passes through a point on the unit circle in the first quadrant where x equals the square root of 3 over 2. So again, I like to draw a picture so I can get a better sense of what's going on. I really only have to focus on the first quadrant. Okay, so we know we're talking about, again, about the unit circle. Sorry, it's a little lopsided there. And in this case, my terminal side passes through a point where the x value is square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so here's angle theta, and again in this ordered pair the x value is square root 3 over 2. I don't know what the y value is, but I don't need to know that. So again, I go over to my unit circle if you don't have it memorized, okay, and we're looking for where the x value is square root 3 over 2, which I noticed that occurs right here, which corresponds to 30 degrees or pi sixth. So the answer for here, for theta, would be 30 degrees or pi over 6. Now, there is a small version of the unit circle on the formula sheet for the final exam, so it's not a necessity that you memorize the unit circle. It's helpful. It cuts down on some of the back and forth, but you will have one to reference on the final exam. So let's look at another one. This one's worded just a little bit differently. Okay, so again, it says if the terminal side of an angle theta passes through a point on the unit circle in the first quadrant where sine theta equals 0. This one's worded differently because instead of saying x or y, it says the sine of theta. But remember, the sine of theta corresponds to y. So they're really telling you that y equals 0 here. So we have our unit circle. Again, our focus is on the first quadrant. My initial side is on the x-axis. Okay, then it says we're going to rotate where the y value is 0. Well, my y value is 0 at this point right here. Again, I don't know what the x is, and I don't have to know that, but it says sine of theta is 0, or same thing is that y is 0. So it kind of looks to me like I haven't rotated at all, so I'm going back over to my unit circle and finding where the sine of theta, or y, is 0, which is right here, which does correspond to 0 degrees or to 0 pi. So if you write it in degrees, my angle here, angle theta, is actually 0 degrees or 0 radians. It's the same question, it's just worded differently. One more. It says if the terminal side of an angle passes through a point on the unit circle in the first quadrant where y equals 1/2, what is the exact measure of theta? So again, I like to draw the picture. It helps me to kind of see what's going on. I would encourage you to do that. We're talking about a unit circle, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine's kind of sloppy, but it gets me to what I need. So I have my initial side, and it says y is 1/2. So I rotate, and in this case, I know that the y value is 1/2. So if I go out to my unit circle and I look for where is my y value 1/2, notice that that is here where the angle is 30 degrees or pi/6. So again, for this particular one, theta, let me change colors. Theta is 30 degrees or pi/6. So just be careful. Again, I would strongly encourage you to print out a copy of the unit circle. Keep it handy and close by as you're working through the problems.